Before I begin, I wanted to talk to you a minute about a reoccurring conversation I keep having with members and with friends. And that conversation is about being sick of politics. All I keep hearing is, I don't want to talk about politics. I don't want to hear about politics. I need a break. Well, that conversation is a problem because Donald Trump kept us in a constant state of frenzy, and it was hard to look away and not be uninvolved. But we shouldn't take this time to reset, to rest and recoup from that experience. The answer to that is absolutely no. Even though the Biden administration is doing well, mainstream political party members of the Republican Party are showing that they have taken over. That the fringe element of the Republican Party has taken over the mainstream and has pushed out many of the moderates. Did you ever think you would feel sympathy for Liz Cheney? Or that 70% of Republicans would be sitting around saying the election was stolen and Biden is an illegitimate president. We have to face such. So in no way can we take on having a break from politics. As the Democratic Senator Alyssa Slotton from Michigan says, we are up against Republicans who have no facts, no truth, and no shame. Let's keep on working. All right, let's get on with our meeting. We're going to have a few announcements. One thing is, set your calendars on July 12th. Our meeting will be in person at Faust Park. We are going to get together. We'll have a nice time. Our speaker is going to be Deb Lavender. And so we will meet there. We may change times to come in a little earlier so that we do not hit the heat of that day. July 12th could be really, really hot. So we will get back to you with that. We will also have a sign up for that because we are providing the refreshments and all, and we need to know how many people are going to come. So that information will come later. Also, we hope that we are doing our last Zoom meeting next month, and Elaine Altoomey will tell you more about that when she talks about her programs. But if we do our last meeting next month, hopefully we're going to take August off. We will not have a meeting in August. Everybody needs a break. And then hopefully we'll be in the hall in September. So that's kind of our upcoming schedule as it stands now. And please stay with us. All right. The minutes of the April meeting were posted online. I know you all read them because you do that for me.
Absolutely.
Anyway, are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? If there are, send them to me. Otherwise, they stand approved as read. All right, our membership report, Jan Wester.
Morning. It's of the end of the month. We had 93 members. We only had six membership dues paid this past month. So if you haven't paid, please get those in. We'll post the PO box, but it's PO Box 31034, St. Louis, Missouri 63131. And please check to make sure you haven't sent us your membership already because we are getting some duplicates. That's it.
All right. Okay. Jan Wester, you want to do the treasurer's report?
Sure. At the end of March, we had $6,228.73. We received $120 in dues memberships, but we had to refund $40. So we had a total revenue of $80. We had $200 in disbursements for honorariums. And our ending balance as of April 30th, 2021 was $6,108.73.
All right, thank you.
Welcome.
All right, program report. Elaine Toomey.
I will be standing because my hip won't let me sit very long, so forgive me. Okay, first of all, I want to thank the co-chairs for getting some speakers while I was ill and helping out. I really appreciate that. So for next month, we have Dr. Kenneth Warren from St. Louis U. He's a professor of poli-sci, has been quoted in newspapers and on TV and so on, and he'll bring us up to date. We never lock him in right now on exactly what they're going to talk about, because with the changing news and politics that we're dealing with, they usually want to deal with the latest thing that's happened, whatever crazy thing that may be. So it's timely. Then, as you know, we really appreciate Suzanne working on our July get-together. We are waiting to see final decisions from the Union Hall about meeting there, but we'll meet outside in July. We'll take a break in August so everybody can relax. I think that was a good suggestion of Suzanne's. And then in September, we do have and she'll be there, whether it's on Zoom or in person at the Union Hall, Dr. Anita Mannion, who has been on public television and the local channels, and who had such a good presentation for us the last time that people requested that we ask her back. So she is coming back in September to kick off sort of our school year start. I think that's it, Suzanne.
All right, thank you. Can you hear me? I just lost my audio.
I can hear you fine.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, you can hear me. All right, thank you, Arlene. Now, Karen, would you like to introduce your speaker?
Be happy to. I'd like to remind people to mute yourself if you haven't already. And if you've got a noisy phone, you might want to silence that. I usually make it a point to read Tony Messenger's columns, and I saw one of particular interest back in February about someone that he referred to as the last Democrat standing in St. Charles County. Well, I happen to know for a fact, because we have members in St. Charles County, that Judge House is not the last one. But I just found the article so intriguing, and his career so interesting that I said, if he's not talking to people yet, he needs to be. Just a little information about him. I'm going to provide more information from him in a minute. He served as Missouri State Representative from 1989 to 1994, Missouri State Senator from 1995 to 2002, Associate Circuit Judge from 2003 and 2004, Circuit Judge from 2005 through 2020. He retired from the bench at the end of 2020 as the last elected Democrat in St. Charles County, as well as the longest serving elected official at 32 years. He was also the Democratic nominee for United States Congress in Missouri's 2nd Congressional District in 2000. Judge House keeps busy in his retirement, volunteering at First St. Charles United Methodist Church, and serves on the Civic Education Committee of the Supreme Court of Missouri. Additionally, he is also a member of the Board of Directors of Quiver River Electric Cooperative. Obviously, Judge House doesn't know when you retire, you're supposed to take a break for a while. But I'd like to start our conversation this morning. You really didn't give me much input, of course the internet did, about your early formative years and your education and so forth. If you wouldn't mind starting with that, we'd appreciate hearing how you got to this point in your life.
Well, thank you so much, Karen. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. It is really an honor to be with you. Thank you. It's been a lot of years since I have attended a West County Democrat Club meeting, so it's great to be back with you. So thank you for your hospitality, and thank you for your invitation. Yeah, I'm definitely not the last Democrat standing in St. Charles County. There are lots of us. We have had a little trouble lately getting over the 50% hump in elections. I was the last. You know, in St. Charles County, we still elect the judges. We're the largest county in the state that still has contested partisan political elections for the judges. So I did run for a judge as a Democrat, and so when my term expired at the end of last year, and I chose not to run for re-election. Then, unfortunately, I was the last elected Democrat in St. Charles County. I think we have about 40 offices that are partisan. So that's not a distinction that I like or enjoy, but there's a challenge in there. So we continue to fight the good fight and be optimistic in St. Charles County. So to my Democrat friends in St. Louis County, count your blessings. You got lots of Democrats in office. And that's a beautiful thing. So no, I'm great to be with you. One of the great things about not being a judge is it removes the muzzle. You know, judges have very strict ethical guidelines about what we can say and can't say, and of course, you cannot participate in a political campaign, and you know, cannot be partisan. And so that was really hard for a former state senator to go from being a state senator to being a judge. So now the muzzle's off, for better or worse, and so I appreciate your invitation and the opportunity to do things like this to help elect Democrats and to get back involved a little bit. So you asked about my background. I don't want to bore you with all that. My political mentor, though, was Congressman Ike Skelton. Some of you may remember Congressman Skelton. He served from Western Missouri, grew up in Lexington, Missouri, and had a predominantly rural congressional district. And Ike was a Democrat member of Congress from Missouri for 34 years. I think it was, 34 years. So he was sort of my mentor, and I managed his campaign and got involved that way. But like most of you, you know, it was always in my blood from the beginning. So I'm eager today to have a conversation and a dialogue. You know, it's amazing that sometimes in politics you don't know what you're fighting. You know, because we know what we stand for, but we don't know what the Republicans stand for now, because they don't either, right? And I think your chairperson alluded to this, you know, at the beginning. You know, remember that in the 2020 cycle, the Republicans had no platform. Remember that? It was just all about Donald Trump. And of course, we know that the Republican Party has morphed into this personality cult for Donald Trump, and they don't even have a platform. They've abandoned even the things that we always disagreed with and never really liked. A lot of them have abandoned that they're really drifting. And so we certainly never want to be overconfident, but you know, they're in such disarray right now that I really do see an opportunity for Democrats. As you all well know, you know, in the off year for the party in power, you can have a bad year. You know, the congressional elections can go poorly for the Democrats traditionally in 2022, but I'm not convinced that's going to happen. You know, I realize people do get frustrated with politics. We tend to get with all the sources of information now and the news media and all the internet and social media. It's easy to get an overdose sometime, but you know, I think like all of you, you're here today, and so we know that you never give up. We never give up on democracy. We never give up on fighting for the Constitution. We never give up on the things that we believe in: social and economic justice for working families, and racial equality, and concerns about climate change, and all the things that drive us. You know, it's just a never-ending battle. So we we can't ever say we've had too much. You know, take a break if you have to. You know, I had a long break when I was a judge, but yeah, as Ted Kennedy would say, the cause goes on and the battle endures. So here we are.
So, what led you to seek elected office? What was the impetus behind that? You said
Kinda caught the bug.
was your mentor. Did you decide did you think, oh, that looks like fun, I want to do that?
Well, I
wanna
kind of
go
caught the
knock on
bug at an
people's
early
doors.
age, you know, had an interest in history and my father was actually a Richard Nixon fan. Okay, you don't have to quote that anywhere, but of course, you know, a lot of people were, because he won 2 elections, right, for president, and I can remember. So even though my father was politically confused, I still love him, you know, and he's gone now, but you know, I kind of got the bug from him. He took me to a rally in Kansas City. I grew up in Lee Summit, if anybody knows where that is originally. And it was a municipal auditorium in Kansas City, and there was a rally for John Danforth running for U.S. Senator in 1970. And I remember seeing Richard Nixon. And even though it was clear that Richard Nixon was a scoundrel and ran a criminal presidency, I think like many of us, you know, we get that from our parents.
Another thing I picked up from Tony Messenger's article. You've been involved in an effort in St. Charles County designed to foster bipartisanship. Apparently, the current county executive of St. Charles County is a friend of yours, which makes me feel bad because I called his office last year and fussed at a staffer about them not having a mask mandate over there. So I'm thinking maybe I should have used kinder words when I indicated he had no common sense.
That's all right. I've told him that to his face a few times. So.
Would such an endeavor even be possible today to talk to people on the other side of the aisle in like a, you know, a community setting and find common ground? Well,
you know, Karen, we tried that. Steve Ehlman and I had an initiative, and we had served together in the state Senate, so we knew each other pretty well. And we came from the day when that's how you got things done, was working together. You know, it's just like President Biden now is trying so hard to work with Republicans and encourage, you know, some kind of negotiation and compromise. And, you know, to people, it's amazing to me when pundits or whoever blames the Democrats or blames Obama or blames Biden when there are votes and we don't get any Republican votes. You know, I mean, it's not Biden's fault if no Republicans vote for his proposal. You know, I think President Biden's doing everything he can to have a bipartisan approach. And of course, we know that that's the better way to do it, especially when you have a 50-50 United States Senate, right? But you'd much rather work together and find common ground. That's how we used to get things done in the Missouri legislature. Now, keep in mind, when I served in the state Senate, the Democrats were the majority. You know, we had a strong majority in the Missouri House of Representatives when I was there. And we had a large majority in the Missouri Senate, and we've seen that for as you all know, for a variety of reasons, have seen that evaporate. But that's how we got things done. So Steve Ehlman and I actually initiated this effort about 10 years ago to try to have meetings where we'd invite the members of the St. Charles County Democratic Central Committee and the Republican Central Committee and the office holders, and we'd have speakers, you know, and try to engage in some kind of rational political dialogue. We had Claire McCaskill spoke to our group. Peter Kinder spoke to our group. So, you know, we had Jay Nixon came to visit with us one time. I mean, we tried to put all this together. I think Donald Trump killed that. It's, you know, that initiative is dead now. And I will say it was really the Republicans, I think, that kind of bailed out and decided that they didn't want to to continue this and stop showing up and providing the support that initiative needed to try to foster a rational, courteous political dialogue and see if you can't, come to common ground. So that's a long answer, Karen, but that initiative, I think Tony Messenger did mention that we did have that bipartisan initiative, but we haven't met in 4 years, really since Trump was elected, because his whole modus operandi was divisiveness. I mean, to me, that's what made Donald Trump the worst president in American history. It's about issues, yes, but what really makes him the worst is, think about even the bad presidents in American history. James Buchanan and Andrew Johnson and Warren Harding. I mean, the really, really bad presidents, at least they tried to bring America together and do the right thing. I think what makes Trump the worst president in American history is that he was intentionally divisive. His entire purpose was to create fear and to divide people. And that, to me, is very dangerous to democracy. And we all know that he was a real threat to the United States Constitution, and of course still is, in encouraging the violence and the hate and the populism and the white nationalism and the anti-government groups. And there's a real threat there from Trump and from the current Republican Party. And I think American democracy is resilient and strong, and we saw it survive last year. But we really have to be on guard now. So unfortunately, our local effort to try to come up with a bipartisan conversation fell apart with Donald Trump.
One could hope, but yeah. I have a question coming into the chat box here. Dennis asks, Dems had a strong presence when you were there. How did Dems fail to result in such a GOP majority? Now, how have things gone so bad so fast, it seems like?
We let the Republicans win the culture wars. In my opinion, there are the phenomena that we deal with in St. Charles County all the time is, obviously the Democrats have been the friend of working people, working families, labor unions. If you're a member of a labor union and you vote for a Republican, you're nuts. I mean, you really ought not to be doing that. And here I am. I should be respectful to people, right? We're trying to raise the dialogue. But that's just a dumb thing to do. If you're a public school teacher and you vote for a Republican, you are really confused, okay? Because there's one party that supports public education and there's one party that wants to tear it apart, okay? Public school teachers ought to be voting for Democrats. Labor union members ought to be voting for Democrats, I think small business people ought to be voting for Democrats. If it wasn't for Democrat policy, there wouldn't be anybody to buy what small businesses have to market. So, but the success of the Republican Party, in my view, and everybody may have their take on this, is that they convince people to vote against their own economic interests and really vote against their social interests as well. They did it with the cultural issues. They manipulate abortion, they manipulate guns. If people of faith, they have manipulated that. I'm a Christian. I think that the Republicans actually hurt, the cause of Christianity. But as we all know, why would any evangelical Christian vote for Donald Trump? That makes no sense whatsoever. He's the most anti-Christian president. He's just openly hostile to Christian values. I mean, but they're able to manipulate that. They made people afraid of Democrats, that they think it's going to be, we're taking away their way of life. A lot of it is just stark racism. I think that they don't want anybody different living in their neighborhood or coming into the community. Those kinds of things that are always sort of below the surface. That kind of bubble up, and the Republicans have figured out how to manipulate those things very, very well and convinced voters to vote against their own, really their own political interest, economic interest, freedom interests. They've been very smart about that, very cynical. I think that game is about up for them. And I think people are, now I said this 20 years ago, but I think people are wising up to the Republicans using the cultural wars, which they want. They want to fight those battles. I mean, you've heard it said, Democrats are reviving the economy right now, and I thought Biden's stimulus package in February was masterful, and the Republicans are talking about Dr. Seuss and the cultural things. To me, that's how they did it. You all may have your own theory, but they made Missourians afraid of Democrats, and we lost rural Missouri. I mean, that's it's hard to find a Democrat in rural Missouri, and that's a huge problem that we've got to work on.
Yeah, my own Missouri House rep would refer to people as socialist on social media. They didn't agree with her. You're a socialist. I finally just said, that's disrespectful. You need to not call your constituents names. We pay your salary. So she dropped that, and now of course you can imagine the word now is Marxist. So
that's right. Well, when Republicans are calling Democrats socialists because the president wants an infrastructure bill, which we need, by the way, I always say, well, define socialist. Okay, if you attended a public school, you're a socialist. If you drove to work on a public highway, you're a socialist. If you or your mother or father ever received a Social Security check, you're a socialist. If you like Medicare benefits, you're a socialist. I mean, we're all socialists in that sense, and to me, it's always a matter of degree. But it's just the latest thing, And now suddenly, of course, Republicans are concerned about the budget deficit, right? They sure didn't care about it with George W. Bush and Donald Trump were increasing the deficit, and Ronald Reagan blowing up the budget deficit. So that's just the label. We'll have to contend with that.
Well, here's an interesting question. I was going to ask you about redistricting and so forth. Glenn asks, okay, the 2020 census will find 400,000 more people in St. Charles County. Republicans seem to be moving towards a second congressional district centered on St. Charles County. Do you feel that Ann Wagner will be vulnerable with 60% of the voters coming from St. Charles County? Please say yes. You can lie to me, just say yes.
Just to make you feel better?
Yeah.
Ann Wagner would not be vulnerable in a district that includes mostly St. Charles County. I don't see that. I don't see that happening. I mean, gerrymandering is a huge problem, of course. And you all, I mean, I know this is a sophisticated group here today. You know what gerrymandering does. I mean, it increases the extremes, right? You have a strong district that's all Republican and a strong district that's all Democrat. And so what do you get? You have contested primaries, and that encourages the political extremes. That's a real problem, because then those are the people that end up winning the general election, and that's why it's so hard to build middle ground and have people come together and work together in a bipartisan spirit in the legislatures, because everybody's afraid of getting primary, right? That's the problem with gerrymandering. What the Republican legislature did to undo the ethical laws that the people of Missouri voted on a few years back, to me, is just absolutely outrageous. We have to have campaign finance reform. We have to have gerrymandering reform. And for those of us that are kind of inside politics, we know how important those things are, but most voters don't. It always gets back to pocketbook issues and the cultural wars that the Republicans like to fight and all of that. And campaign finance is an incredibly important issue. But take a poll on it today and see if that motivates any voters, and it doesn't. And gerrymandering doesn't, because people don't understand it. And yet it's the biggest impediment right now to rational, civil, progressive, productive government. So I'm not optimistic, unfortunately, Karen, about the gerrymandering process or how those districts end up. It's actually a shame. Now, here's a thought. I'm not sure I've thought of this through all the way. While Missouri, you hate to lose clout in terms of our representation, if we had lost a congressional seat in the redistricting. You know, if we'd gone from 8 to 7 congressional seats, that actually would have helped the Democrat, because the seat we would have lost would have been a Republican seat. Now, of course, you don't know really where it would have gone, so that's very speculative. But anyway, something to think about there.
Oh, here's a comment. I met an elderly white woman in Chesterfield who told me that Trump, or I'm sorry, I'm supposed to call him the former guy, was sent by God, is divine, and is expected to be flawed. Yeah, where do people come up with that? You know, that he's the chosen one and so forth. Well, he actually referred to himself in that fashion, didn't he? Or did I imagine that? But
I wish we had imagined that. He did call himself the chosen one. That should offend every Christian person of faith. You know, that comment alone should be very offensive. Yeah, you know, I can't explain it. Why he would be appealing to people of faith. I think that people, you know, we know a lot of people are predisposed. They believe what they want to believe, and he's their person, and they're gonna go with him regardless of what he says. That kind of hyper partisanship, I think, is a real problem. I mean, I would hope that if we had, you know, an autocratic demagogue like that come along in the Democratic Party, that you and I and everybody on this call would be willing to stand up to that. And not just follow the personality cult just because it's a Democrat, right? I mean, we'd like to be a little more open-minded and objective and intelligent and informed than that.
I believe the problem came up, Franklin Graham is the one who anointed him. And he had a vision that Trump had been sent to the world to take care of that. I think that's where that whole thing came from.
And that's pretty scary. And Franklin Graham is a real danger, in my view. He's a danger to America and a danger to the Christian faith. And people just have to wake up and see that for what it is.
okay, Ellen wants to know, as do I think I already know the answer to this. Do you feel the Dems are doing a good job of controlling the message and taking it back from the Republicans?
So I do not feel we've done a very good job of that. I think I have a lot of faith in Nancy Pelosi. I think she's masterful. I think, I mean, she's been the Speaker of the U.S. House twice, and she has guided the message a lot. I think Biden's done a very good job of the message. I think that's why he won, because he stayed on message. Overall, though, so I think we're improving. Overall, I think we've lost our message. I mean, again, why would any labor union member ever vote for a Republican? We're losing that message. I mean, St. Charles County, if I may use that example, we're full of people who have a wonderful opportunity at life because of what the Democratic Party did for them. They got a good education. Their mother and father, had economic opportunities. Maybe worked for a labor union. They grew up in a free country with civil liberties, and they move across the Missouri River, buy a $400,000 house, and become a Republican. And that is maddening, and we've got to do a better job with messaging. I'm proud to be a member of the party that actually wants more people to vote. I mean, wouldn't it be sad to be a Republican and to have the voter suppression initiatives that they have, that the only way they can win is if fewer people vote, if they make it more difficult to vote, if they put obstacles in the way of voting. That's really sad, but that too is a message issue that I think we've need to do a better job on, and remind people why we have such a high standard of living and where the opportunity comes from for those that are less fortunate.
Here's a good question. I didn't think of this. Drawing on your experience as a legislator and a judge, with the Missouri Attorney General sworn to protect the Missouri Constitution, is he therefore required to protect Medicaid expansion against the GOP budget defunding by the legislator when a lawsuit is brought against the defunding? What kind of horrible, awful mess did they stir up doing what they've done?
it really is outrageous what the Republican legislature did in failing to abide by the will of the people. I'm sure that will go to court. Okay, there's really no precedent for this kind of thing, so I can't sit here today and say, you know, that there's a definite legal direction that that's going to go in. I think, and it's a great question, you know, is the Attorney General obligated to support the position that the people have taken? He won't. I mean, we know that. Our Attorney General has very little regard for the United States Constitution or the Missouri Constitution as it is. Really a frightening person in the political positions that he's taken. So he's not going to try to defend the vote of the people. But the issue of, you know, when the people vote, give a directive for the expansion of Medicaid, and then the legislature fails to fund it, there's really no precedent on that. So it's going to go to court, and we'll see where that ends up. I mean, I fear that judges are going to give discretion to the legislature on that, let them get away with doing that. And that's why we just have to make them pay a political price, I think. I mean, I don't expect to win that in court. I hope I'm wrong, but they just have to pay a political price for, again, going against the clearly stated will of the people of Missouri.
Okay, here's a good one. Who might defeat Ann Wagner? Shoup had the best chance and came close, but not quite.
Shoup ran a great campaign. We've had some good candidates, you know, over the past years. I don't have a name in mind. You know, it's just a matter of continuing the battle. And so I don't know the answer to that question, but, you know, let me give you the answer. It can happen because things do change. There are tides in politics. There are waves in politics. You know, I mentioned I worked for Congressman Ike Skelton in Missouri, and he served in the U.S. Congress for 34 years, and he was defeated. Now, he got beat in 2010, and that was the Tea Party wave, you know, and a lot of Democrats that were potentially from Republican areas and were vulnerable got defeated that year. But, you know, whoever thought that Ike Skelton would have been defeated? So there will be an opportunity, I think. And in the case of the 2nd congressional district, I think, even though I said that moving into St. Charles County probably does not help it in the short run, I think in the long run, I think that district will eventually become much more Democrat than it is, just based on the evolution of where the issues are going nationally. I'm optimistic in the long run, if not the short run.
Do you see any opportunities for candidates, Democratic candidates in St. Charles County to get in there and flip a district or something? We need to try to move. We're obviously red. We need to try to move back to at least purple. What type of candidate do you think might have a better chance? Who do we need to be looking for to have run for House?
So Karen, I appreciate that. I don't know if you all know a lot of the faces and names in St. Charles County. I think some of you do. Some of you may not be familiar. We actually have a great group of people that are working right now, a great group of Democrats working in St. Charles County. Morton Todd, you know, is the chairperson of the Central Committee. Cheryl Hibbler and Paul Woody, and I hate to start mentioning names because there's a lot of them. I'll leave somebody.
I know
out.
Lots of those people by way of Facebook. Yeah.
I mean, they're great people. They're working hard. God bless the Central Committee. I mean, they have just, you know, they've hung in there and fought the tough fight. It's hard to lose, you know, and keep going and stay motivated, you know. But they have, and we know in St. Charles County, if a statewide Democrat running for governor or a statewide office, U.S. Senator, if they get 47% of the vote in St. Charles County, they're going to win the election. So we know that we don't have to necessarily get over 50%, but we need to make sure that we don't get clobbered at the same time. And you know, Jay Nixon did very well in St. Charles County. Claire McCaskill did very well in St. Charles County. Remember Joan Kelly Horn? I always tell Joan Kelly Horn, I haven't talked to her in a while, but I always say, remember, she won her election in St. Charles County. We put her over the top. Now there's a lot of things have happened since then. That's been a few years, but the point being that St. Charles County, it's just too big at 410,000 residents now. Much bigger than St. Louis, the city of St. Louis. We're the third largest county in Missouri. We're just too big to ignore or to give up on. So we know that, and we've got to do well. Now the question is, can we elect a state legislator or a county council person? And the answer to that question is yes. I think we will in the very near future get back on the board there with some targeted seats that have a good, solid Democratic performance. We've had some great candidates. They've come close. We're going to keep fighting that, and I think we'll win.
Okay, could we take about 5 minutes if any of you have questions for our speaker? And please don't leave when the speaker is over. We still have Glenn's legislative report at the end of this. So if you have a question for our speaker, please ask now.
Oh, Doris? Is Doris? Doris, you're muted. Does Doris want to be muted?
Look down at the bottom. Yeah.
I have one more question for you. As a member of the League of Women Voters, I'm really interested in voter engagement. I was really interested in knowing what does the Civic Education Committee of the Supreme Court of Missouri do? Well,
thank you for asking that. That's not a political organization, of course, very much not political. But I chaired the Civic Education Committee. If you would ever, if you're in any organization, and I know a lot of folks who are joining us here today are involved in a lot of other organizations, some political, some not, and you'd like a presentation from a Missouri judge, probably a local judge, and it would be a judge from St. Louis County in your case. We have a series of presentations that are designed to all the way from middle school and high school and college and adults. A series of presentations that are all designed to help people understand how the judicial system works and how judges make difficult decisions. They're great presentations. We've got a new one on the bicentennial of the Missouri judiciary. Again, not political at all, not partisan, but if you're looking for any kind of a program, please do, you just let me know or go to the Civic Education Committee website, which you can Google on the, it's Missouri Supreme Court website, which is courts.mo.gov. And it's a great program, and we'd be glad to give a civic education presentation. It might deal with First Amendment rights, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of religion. There's presentations on the Fourth Amendment, the search and seizure clause of the U.S. Constitution. We've got a new one on what the government can get out of your cell phone. There's, the Supreme Court had a case on that recently, and just great programs on civic education, how the judiciary works. So I appreciate you asking that, Karen. And speaking of League and Women Voters, if I may, thank you for your leadership on that. There's actually a couple of issues coming up in St. Charles County that the League may be involved in, I understand. I don't mean to speak out of turn here, but it would be very nice. There's two issues coming up in St. Charles County that I think would improve government, and neither one of them are directly partisan issues. One of them is us amending the St. Charles County Charter to go to a bipartisan election commission like you have in St. Louis County. We still have a partisan elected director of elections. So our elections are completely run by Republicans. Okay. And so again, that might work in a rural county of 20,000 people. A lot of people don't think that's really appropriate for a county of 410,000 people. We ought to have a bipartisan election commission like St. Louis County have, instead of a partisan elected director of elections that is now a Republican. Used to be a Democrat when I started, that now a Republican. So that's going to take an amendment to the St. Charles County Charter, so a vote of the people. So the league may be, I understand, may be interested in that. And then the other issue is the nonpartisan court plan, which you also have in St. Louis County, and we do not have. And that is in taking the politics, the partisan politics out of electing judges. As I mentioned when we started, judges in St. Charles County are elected in partisan contested political elections. You've got Republicans running against Democrats. I sit on the bench as a judge did, you know, and you've got one lawyer who gave your campaign $1,000 and another lawyer on a case, you know, who you've never met before, you know, that's from the city, you know, is that a good system to have? You know, I think we can do better than that. Now you count on the judge to be ethical and do the right thing and be fair and impartial, and we do. But is that really the ideal system? So the nonpartisan court plan, of course, allows a nonpartisan commission to come up with a panel of judges when you have a panel of nominees when you have a judicial vacancy, and the governor makes the selection. That has actually served St. Louis County very well. I think you keep, no system is totally void of politics, but electing judges in partisan contested elections is a really bad idea, I think. And it's time to make a change. So hopefully the league might be interested in helping us there too. So
I know who to contact. I'll be on that.
Okay.
I'll be on that. Doris, did you have a question?
Well, if we have time, yes.
I think we do. Go ahead.
Okay, one of my concerns is that people, Democrats, myself, we don't really have a good comeback. When somebody says, you know, Democrats are socialistic, I stand there and say, no, I'm not. But we need, I think, to communicate more often and frequently what Democrats are, what we stand for.
Yeah.
And how do you go about doing that? Instead of standing there and saying, no, I'm not a socialist. And by the way, Medicaid and Medicare is not totally socialistic. There are plenty of people who pay a lot monthly for Medicare.
You are
we pay for Social Security too.
Sure. Well, you're absolutely right, Doris, and I appreciate your thoughts. That gets back to the messaging, of course, you know, that someone asked about earlier. Let me give you an example of how I think we can improve our messaging. When someone says we're a socialist, of course, I would say, well, look, let's compare two things that have happened in the United States Congress in the last 3 years, the last 4 years. Compare the Trump tax cuts for the wealthy in that tax package that was enacted in 2017. Compare that with President Biden and the Democrats' economic stimulus from the pandemic stimulus that was passed in February of 2021. Go online, folks. There are some great analyses that have been done. There's a public policy research center that has looked at some of these. And of course, what the Republican tax cut did was favor the top 10%, and in particular, the top 1% of the wealthiest Americans. And that's not just the political rhetoric that the Democrats put out. I mean, that tax cut was very harmful to poor people and middle-class families and supported the rich. The Republican tax cut was. In contrast, the Democrat tax cuts and tax policy in the stimulus package that was passed this year favors the middle class and favors the poor. And what more do we need? That's a stark portrayal, I think, of why, you know, someone says, why are you a Democrat? I mean, that's the answer. Are you for the top 1%? Do you think rich and privileged people need even more? Or are you for, you know, working families and regular folks that have been oppressed and are trying to get by? And to me, it's just so clear. And that you're right, Doris. I mean, it really gets back to the messaging. And of course, you know, in politics, if it takes more than 10 seconds to explain it, you're in trouble, right? It's got to fit on a bumper sticker. But I think there's probably a way to do that.
Okay. Well, we really, really have enjoyed this conversation.
Yes, thank you.
Judge House, I hope you can come back and talk with us again sometime. Are you considering running for office again?
Well, I did it for 32 years. Thank you, Karen. I think I'm finished running for office. So, but I want to help elect Democrats in St. Charles County and across the St. Louis region. Thank you all for your leadership. I know it can be discouraging, you know, but again, you've got a lot of elected Democrats where you are, so count your blessings there. But you know, we never give up. It's the survival of liberty is at stake. You know, when Joe Biden said this election was about the soul of America, that was not over the top political rhetoric. That's really what that election was about. I firmly believe a second Trump term could very well have seen the end of American democracy as we know it and love it. And that is a very frightening thing. And we dodged that bullet, and we simply have to keep fighting. And I don't know why, you know, our Republican neighbors feel the way they do, but they're starting to chip away. That Republican base is we see it crumbling. And as I said, you know, they don't even know what they stand for right now. You know, you're right. Liz Cheney is no friend of America. She does sound like a voice of reason right now, but just remember what her father did to the damage that he did to America. But in any event, we never give up, and I'm always optimistic about you know, fighting for the right thing. So thank you for your leadership, because you all never quit too. So I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right, I'll sign off. Take care. We'll see you soon.
Okay, thank you. Take care.
Thank you so much. All right, everyone. Take a quick potty break. Glenn is going to be on in just a second.
Good.
Glenn, go ahead. Go ahead. They didn't leave.
Okay. Good morning. First, let's go over how crazy things are for Republicans in Washington. In 2016, Representative Cheney supported Donald Trump, but then she decided he had gone off the rails. In 2016, Representative Stefanik did not support Donald Trump, but she became a true believer when she saw the handwriting on the wall. So now we're going to see a situation where Liz Cheney is replaced by somebody who is less of a Trumper than she is in many ways. So that's where they're at. Remember, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell still promises to oppose everything that Joe Biden does. One great example, in the infrastructure plan, one of the major projects is likely to be a bridge between Covington, Kentucky and downtown Cincinnati. That bridge was damaged a while back, and unfortunately, that means that Mitch McConnell is going to be voting against the best interest of his fellow Kentuckians by not voting for money to fix that bridge, repair that bridge. That's where they're at, where ideology trumps good old-fashioned local politics. Something else you have to remember, into this Republican mud bath, Biden is still trying to push bipartisanship on things like infrastructure, but also he needs cooperation from the Republicans, especially in the Senate, to get people appointed to positions. There are still major undersecretaries and assistant secretaries and other major people connected to the federal bureaucracy who have not yet had a hearing, because in many ways Republicans are still trying to gum up the works in the Senate for the approval process. The system depends on some level of cooperation, and they're not getting it. The other thing is the Republicans in the House have been told that all they have to do is stay loyal to Donald Trump, and they're going to win back the majorities in the House and Senate next year. So they have no incentive to do anything, even things that would help their own local people. The census report is coming at the end of September. I asked that question to Judge House because we are hearing things already out of Missouri Republicans and national Republicans about what they want to do with the census. The one thing we have to expect is an awful lot of gerrymandering. You notice that in all the different states around the nation, Republicans are trying to make it harder to vote. when it comes time to draw lines for congressional districts, you can really expect them to go even further, doing as much gerrymandering as they can, because they know they've lost the national elections for president. They know their base is shrinking. The census is also going to find, and this is a great irony, the state of New York is going to lose a congressional seat because 89 people didn't turn in their census information. In a state of many millions of people, they're losing a congressional seat, not because they don't have the people, but because the completion rate for the census this year is very low. The Trump administration didn't put money into the census. They didn't do good follow-up, and yes, COVID hurt that cause, but the census did not do as much follow-up in 2020 as they did in 2010 or even in the year 2000. What that means is that we're going to have a lot of problems when the census numbers come out. In Missouri, for example, we didn't lose a congressional seat this time, but we're probably going to go down to 7 members of Congress or 7 representatives in 2030. Something to look forward to. There is some good news in Washington. Slowly but surely, the Biden administrators are trying to return the bureaucracy to normal. We're hearing stories from throughout the system that they're actually putting people in government jobs who know what they're doing and want to help people. That's been very apparent, for example, in the Department of Agriculture. We went from a political appointee who had no background in nutrition programs or nutrition to a woman who has a long history as an advocate for food stamps and anti-hunger programs. A lot of people are getting hired in the federal government to fill in jobs that the Trump administration allowed to go away, which means that there's going to be more bureaucracy, yes, but it also means there'll be more EPA inspections. There'll be more things trying to make the system better. So that's going to take a while, but the process has started. On the international front, President Biden is catching some flack from Republicans for taking the Republican position. President Biden is being more stern with both China and Russia than Trump ever was. And suddenly, Republicans who are always for a strong national defense and containing the Red Menace are suddenly in favor of China having new islands in the South China Sea. They're not objecting after the CIA reported that China is trying to buy land to put a naval base in the Atlantic Ocean. Ironically, it is now the Democrats who are being seen as the party of guns rather than the party of butter. But the Republicans have completely lost their way, all changed their stripes, and it's going to be very messy. We're going to have to see what happens over the next few years. In Missouri, we passed a record $35 billion budget, $35 billion. And for the first time in decades, Missouri actually has enough money to make progress on a lot of things we're behind on, such as education funding, roads, and so on. Of course, the Missouri legislature has Republican supermajorities, and they really don't want anything good happening. There's a lot of money just sitting there from the federal government in the impact funds for the pandemic, which has not been accounted for, not been spent. Over the next year or so, we're probably going to see some very interesting audits coming out of Nicole Galloway's office about how the state government is sitting on a lot of money that could have been used and was supposed to be used to help people. Now, as Judge House pointed out, the Missouri legislature is not, their budget does not include funding for Medicaid. There are 3 schools of thought right now. The first, we'll call it the Senate version, is that since Missouri Medicaid was expanded by the Constitution, those people who become eligible on July 1st can apply, and they'll be covered, and the legislature will have to make up the cost difference in either a special session or in a supplemental budget appropriation early next year. I do not agree with that, because the way Missouri Medicaid works is we have one Medicaid program by title, but there's like 12 subsections in it. And prior to the legislative action, they made it a decision to create the Adult Eligibility Group, AEG, to handle these people who were coming in. They did it that way so it'd be easier to contain the cost, or in this case, to not appropriate money to it. Missouri can only spend money that's appropriated. And with no money appropriated for adults with an income over basically 23% of the poverty level, it's going to be hard to even process their applications. The second school of thought is that Governor Parson and Attorney General Schmidt are going to do their jobs and fight valiantly in court to protect the rights of Missouri voters. Please raise your hand if you expect that to happen. It is more likely, since Schmidt has already gone on record as being against Medicaid expansion, suing the federal government for the way it's being handled and so on, it's probably likely they will file a lawsuit to enforce the Constitution, but they're not going to make it a high priority. That could cause Medicaid expansion to have to work its way through the state courts and then the federal courts, which could take 1 year, 2 years, maybe even 3 years. The third possibility is that the governor says we have to do this, and he calls a special session. The special session comes back, and the special session decides still not to fund Medicaid, and we're back to square one. So the bad news is it's looking more and more just like puppy mills and concealed carry, that the legislature is going to pretty much get by with not following the will of the people. And as I mentioned a couple of months ago, we even had Republicans on the floor of the House saying the issue was too complicated for voters to understand. So please tell all your Republican friends their elected representatives think they're dumb and incapable of understanding big policies. Within the budget, it does look like there's going to be a 2% pay raise for state government employees, with a little extra money for correction workers. First of all, that money is still not going to move the needle enough for Missouri workers to not be the worst paid in the nation. We're still going to be the worst paid state workers after that 2% raise. There's also two complicating factors. The legislature has passed raises for workers before, and the governor has withheld the money, saying Missouri didn't have the money. The other thing is we haven't heard yet what the family health plan cost and the individual health plan cost is going to be for Missouri workers. Based on prior years' experience, it is very possible that the average Missouri worker with a family takes home less money after that 2% raise because of increases in medical coverage than they do now. We've had several years where Missouri workers actually saw their paychecks go down because of increases in medical coverage costs. That could happen again this year. Public defenders are getting $3 million more, which is great. It's a great start. However, the people who examined this independently recommended Missouri spend at least $20 million more on public defenders each year. So we're getting like 50 more public defenders when we need about 250. Also, there's a group called the Opportunity Trust. They're a severe right-wing group trying to get money from public education to fund private education. And it appears their eventual goal is the destruction of the public school system. There is a grant available for $2 million in the budget, which it looks like it was written so they would be the only ones who would qualify. These are the people who've been running the Normandy School District with a superintendent who is not accredited to be a superintendent and with all sorts of other problems. They have a lot of big supporters. They've got their fingers in a lot of privatizing education projects. And so this being Missouri, we're giving them public money. The budget also, while it funds education at the level of the Republicans' lower foundation formula, it does not fund education at the level of the traditional education formula. And also, they're creating an education savings account voucher program, which will issue up to $75 million in tax credits that people can apply for, and or people with kids can apply for. And that money can go to private and religious schools. Now, it is a tax credit, which means Missouri will be drawing less revenue. It doesn't directly take money out of public school funding. However, the school board association, all the teachers groups all know that this is the foot in the door, $75 million. And it's limited to big cities or areas of 30,000 people or more. But they expect, and I think they're probably right, that in 2 or 3 or 4 years, you're going to see this every year expanded in the budget from 75 million to $200 million to $500 million. And what they're going to start doing to fund that is, well, they're going to say, they're going to go back to their idea, the money follows the child. So in other words, instead of money going to the Parkway School District or the Northwest School District in Jefferson County, the money the state would normally have sent to that district for that child will go to the virtual school, go to the private school, etc. Republicans keep saying how this is a plan to help children in low-income areas get better education. However, experience in other states with similar type of programs and plus common sense, a $5,000 voucher is not going to allow a child from North St. Louis to go to MICDS. It's not going to allow them to go to a Catholic high school where the tuition is around $8,000 or $9,000. What's going to happen is this is going to be a backdoor subsidy for private education for middle class and upper class families. That's what we know is coming. That's why there's a lot of unhappiness about that being in the budget this year. Try to put this in a nice way. The governor of the state of Missouri actually likes some Democrats more than he does some of his fellow Republicans. The Speaker of the House and the governor have had an especially testy relationship. That probably is feeding in to what's going on with Medicaid expansion and some other things that the governor really didn't want. One big thing, though, is that the governor can call special sessions. We know we have to have a special session on redistricting because the Census Bureau won't release their numbers till September. And Missouri's going to have those lines all drawn before filing opens up for congressional races, state house races, state senate races in February. So that's going to be coming up. Also, there's again possibilities of the need for special sessions from the Republican point of view to give blanket COVID liability to businesses and other organizations. And again, Medicaid expansion is a possibility. It's hard to get anything done in a special session when the guy who calls the special session isn't really talking to the people who are going to be running the special session. And that's probably what we're looking at. It's not Republican versus Democrat, it's Republicans fighting among themselves. On top of that, within the House and Senate, we're seeing disputes between the less crazy Republicans and the conservative caucus. The conservative caucus pretty much controls the legislative flow in the Senate now. And they're getting more and more members in the House. And so it's going to be people like Andrew Koenig and Onder and Igo and O'Loughlin and so on, who are basically deciding what's going to happen for all Missourians. A small number of Republican ultra-conservatives in the right place are going to be setting the agenda for this session and future sessions. Here are two things that hopefully will get changed, but probably not. The first, earlier in the session, Senator Paul Whelan from Jefferson County got an amendment passed in the Senate, which forbids the use of Medicaid funds for any birth control devices or prescriptions. That is against federal rules. However, the Republicans in the Senate didn't want to vote for or against a proposal that they thought might be considered pro-life. They're hoping it gets lost in the shuffle between the House and the Senate this last week. If it does not, it is possible that Missouri would have a legal obligation to provide basic Medicaid services, but we wouldn't be eligible to get federal money to pay for those services. That could be an $8 billion loss for Missouri revenue and create real havoc. Whelan told the Senate that the Biden administration won't enforce federal law and federal regulation. That's what they're counting on. In the same way, the St. Charles senators, Igo and Onder, got through the Senate a proposal to end the vehicle emission testing in St. Charles, Lincoln, and Warren counties. If that happens, Missouri will be out of compliance with the voluntary plan we filed with the EPA. If that happens, Missouri loses at least $52 million in MoDOT funding, primarily targeting urbanized areas. And also, it could make us ineligible for any infrastructure money that comes down from the Biden administration for roads in the future. Those two things are out there. And if you're a pro-gun person, it is very likely that after August 28th, you'll be able to carry your Uzi into church with you, and the pastor and the rest of the congregation can't stop you. Among the things in this year's gun bill was getting rid of the prohibitions of a lot of places where guns can't go, and one of them was churches. Churches have a way to avoid that, but they have to mount a monster sign with state-specified language for every entrance to the church, et cetera, and they basically have to say, yes, we are overturning the law. We are choosing not to follow the law of the state of Missouri. That's not a very inviting message for a church. Also, it looks like concealed carry as part of the Second Amendment Preservation Act and other measures. It looks like 18-year-olds will be able to carry concealed weapons starting August 29th, which means next year teachers are going to have to be really careful about those grades they give graduating seniors. Any questions? By the way, my report, a longer version of it, can be found on the West County Dems website. And I noticed that Maureen is asking about the Planned Parenthood. The Medicaid birth control issue is there. Also remember that there is a movement again this year in the Medicaid funding bill for the traditional Medicaid program to deny any funding to Planned Parenthood. They do this time and again. They go to court. Missouri spends millions of dollars. They lose, and Planned Parenthood gets their funding back. But it's a little game they like to play. They like to waste money on these frivolous causes because it lets them score points with people out of state and with the pro-life act.
All right, are there any other questions? Okay, thank you, Glenn, for your report. Glenn, you want to tell them where they can find it if they want to print it out?
If I want to print out again, it's on the West County Dems website. And if you can't get it there, just, let me know. GKOE@primary.net. I'll type that in the chat. Any other questions?
Is there anything else? Mary, did you have something? No. Okay. Well, thank you all for being here today. And reminder, we will have another Zoom meeting in June, and then we will be at Faust Park in July. Dennis, what do you need?
Yeah, if I could just share something just for the benefit of the group, and I realize this is a nerdy kind of details, but it still is of significance to folks, that the Democrats, the Republicans are doing as well, are in a process of nominating the people that will be doing the redistricting. Each congressional district has to nominate people for the Senate and legislative redistricting committees. So, and there are people who are from very central committees and whatever who are on those. So the first congressional district, I believe, is meeting Monday night, tonight. The second congressional district is meeting tomorrow night, and it's for the purpose of nominating our people from the Democratic side that would then go to the governor, and the governor from that picks the people who will be on the redistricting commission. So just to make you aware, the process is underway, and if you happen to be one of those people who's supposed to be at those meetings, because we have to have a quorum for us to be able to select the people, or then it's totally up to the governor to pick who he wants to be on those commissions. So
Dennis,
just an FYI.
Dennis, are you involved with that? Are you on the committee?
I am on, yes, for the second congressional district. So I plan to be at our meeting tomorrow night, which is at the UFCW.
Wonderful. All right, anything else? Okay, we'll see you all in June. Bye-bye.